this weekend to China. As you know, I'd just like to briefly address the presence of the Chinese surveillance balloon in U.S. airspace. I spoke this morning with Director of the CCP Central Foreign Affairs Office, Wang Yi, to convey that in light.
So not the Chinese spy balloon, but the Chinese surveillance balloon. Very official, even though it's not a spy balloon or a surveillance balloon. Probably. Who knows? Maybe it is. But also CPC, not CCP, not the Chinese Communist Party. The Communist Party of China. Dang U.S. officials.
In light of China's unacceptable action, I am postponing my planned travel this weekend to China. As you know, President Biden and President Xi agreed during their meetings at Bali in November that I would travel to Beijing to follow up on their discussions. We've been working across the U.S. government to prepare for a substantive set of discussions on issues that matter to the American people and to people around the world. And we've been engaging for some time with our counterparts in Beijing to prepare for these meetings. Yesterday, the Department of Defense announced that we had detected and were tracking a high-altitude surveillance balloon that remains over the continental United States. We continue to track and monitor the balloon closely. We're confident.
Why wouldn't they just shoot it down? If it's a threat to U.S. security, just shoot down the balloon. Like, we pay $700 billion a year in defense. You know, our defense budget is more than the next, 10 freaking countries combined. And it increases year after year after year. And that's just direct military spending. That doesn't even include, a lot of Pentagon costs or private contractor costs or, other costs associated with the enormous U.S. empire and maintaining that. So why do we pay all this money for defense and then we can't even shoot down a literal balloon that floats into our airspace over our missile sites? It was literally over the missile sites. Why didn't you just shoot it down with one of the missiles? But instead, they just let it float around for as long as possible. Let people post TikToks of it. Let people post videos of it. Let Americans hear about this, incredible phenomena of the Chinese spy balloon. And then act like our military's incompetent. Act like we don't have enough defense spending. Act like we're not already encircling China with military bases. And we need to threaten them further, spend more on defense, spend more on the military. And it's just crazy that such a random event triggered this. And, that the corporate media and that these disgusting imperialists like Antony Blinken, who's a skilled and experienced imperialist, skilled in the art of using the government to as a tool to benefit his corporate donors. Even if that means overthrowing foreign governments and throwing their countries into chaos or starving their children with economic sanctions. But he's a skilled imperialist, so a freaking balloon floats into Montana from China, and he's able to use this as reason for why we need to be even more aggressive towards China, as poverty and inflation and homelessness are through the roof in the U.S. Wages are stagnant. We could use a jobs guarantee and all these different social programs and economic policies that would benefit the American people. But no, there was a balloon that floated into Montana. So we got to spend all our surplus, all our labor, all our resources, all our tax money on more defense spending, which is really, offense spending. So China has said, is a meteorological or data gathering balloon. And the main thing that they've just stressed is calm. Like if you go on CGTN, they're like, we're sorry, obviously this is bad. There's tensions between the U.S. and China. So it's bad that a balloon from China would float into your airspace, but let's respond to this calmly like adults. Let's do this rationally. This is from Mao Ning, who's the Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson. Just over and over again, she said, this, isn't a spy balloon. We're not trying to spy on you. China's satellites have the ability to spy on the U.S. anyways. And like I said, those missile silos in Montana that apparently this thing was spying on take up over 13,000 square feet. So if China's satellites aren't able to pick that up, they're not very good satellites. But regardless, they have encouraged the U.S. to handle this calmly, have encouraged the U.S. to handle this professionally, cool-headedly, And this was before Anthony Blinken announced that he was not going to take his diplomatic visit to Beijing. So the Chinese foreign minister was literally on the phone with Anthony Blinken, like, all right, let's just be calm and professional about this. We didn't mean to do anything negative. We didn't mean to fly, aircraft into your airspace. Obviously, it's just a balloon. Our satellites could pick up this information anyways. And then Blinken's like, oh, this is, a terrible act by China, calls it a violation of international law, which is hilarious coming from the U.S., the country that in the past 2 decades has destroyed Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, Palestine. I mean, we can list the number of murderous U.S. interventions forever. But when China, floats a balloon into Montana, we're going to freak out and call it a violation of international law. When we called our carpet bombing of Serbia and Yugoslavia, or NATO's carpet bombing of them, just according to international law, like, what does international law even mean to Anthony Blinken in the U.S.? Nothing. But yeah, they've responded in the opposite way as what China has encouraged, as what would make sense, in a world that made sense, in a world with a foreign policy of mutual cooperation between world superpowers, which is what China wants. The U.S., would say, oh, yeah, sorry about the balloon. We're going to shoot it down now or whatever. But instead, they're trying to turn it into incentive for war. Like it's the Gulf of Tonkin incident or the WMDs in Iraq. So let's see if I have anything else on this. Called it a reckless violation of international law. And yeah, just so you can get a visual, these are the U.S. military bases surrounding China. This is what it looks like. So we're mad that a Chinese balloon floated over Montana when the U.S. has encircled the country of China with our military. The U.S. military that has carried out countless horrific regime change acts in the past 70 years to, even longer than that, of course. So the hypocrisy of Anthony Blinken to be like, this is a reckless violation of international law. How could they spy on Montana and the 4 people who live there? It's like, well, I don't think they did, but even if they did, they would have reason to, because we've got them encircled and we're pointing a loaded gun at them. So what do I know, though? So yeah, I mean, and why this is scary is because, like, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which triggered Vietnam, I believe, right? Was it the justification for Vietnam? Or like the WMDs in Iraq? There's always some incident, something that they use to justify, warfare or intervention or regime change. And, that could be what the U.S. is trying to do here. It couldn't, it might not be the event. I'm not saying the U.S. is about to invade China on behalf of the balloon or, in retaliation for the balloon. But, it adds to the mounting list of just ridiculous propaganda allegations, falsified allegations by the U.S. against China that are created and alleged for the purpose of manufacturing consent for regime change or, getting the American people to fear and hate China and look to their government to protect them from China with more defense spending and all that. Was there any evidence that it was actually a surveillance balloon or not? No, that's what's so funny too, is because the media, like the talking heads, and then Blinken, they're like, we are absolutely certain. We have complete evidence that this is a Chinese spy balloon or a surveillance balloon. But they never say what the evidence is. They never say how they know that. They're just like, the Pentagon has such amazing technology and capabilities that we know exactly what the balloon is. We couldn't shoot it down before it got into our airspace, but we know its exact properties and where it came from. And it's just nonsense. So no, not a lot of evidence that it was a surveillance balloon. And China's admitted that it was their balloon, and they're saying it's not a surveillance balloon. But we know evidence never stops the U.S. from doing and getting and saying what they want. And that's the darn truth.